The day my sister told me she was pregnant again, my coffee went cold in my hands, and something quiet inside me finally snapped. I was standing in the narrow kitchen of our rented duplex in Reno, the one with the peeling linoleum and the cabinet that never quite closed. The refrigerator hummed like it was tired of keeping our secrets. I remember the way the late afternoon light leaned through the blinds, cutting the room into pale stripes, the way Kiara leaned against the counter like she had all the time in the world. She smiled when she said it, soft, smug, practiced. 6 weeks, she told me, patting her stomach as if it were already a blessing. We're keeping it. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the drip forming on the rim of my mug, watched it slide down and disappear. My heart didn't race. It didn't even ache. It just hardened, like wet cement finally setting. In that moment, I knew my life could not keep going the way it had been. Before that day, my life was a series of alarms and lists. Alarms to wake up before dawn. Lists taped to the fridge. Who needed lunch money? Who had a dentist appointment? Which bill? I was 26 years old and lived like a woman twice my age, carrying responsibilities that weren't mine but had been handed to me anyway, wrapped in the language of family. My name is Naomi Carter. I managed a warehouse on the south end of Reno, long concrete floors, the smell of cardboard and diesel, forklifts whining like insects. It was steady work, honest. I wore steel-toed boots and kept my hair pulled back tight, because loose things got caught in moving parts. I liked the order of it. Inventory made sense to me. Systems did what they were designed to do. Home did not. Kiara is my older sister by 3 years. Growing up, she was the loud one, the laugh that filled rooms, the kind of girl teachers remembered and neighbors forgave. I was the quiet one, always watching, always cleaning up after. When our mother passed and our father drifted out of our lives like a man who had already packed his bags, that dynamic only deepened. Kiara needed help. I could help. That's how it started. By the time I moved in temporarily, Kiara already had 3 children. By the time Travis showed up, her boyfriend with the lazy grin and the habit of leaning instead of standing, there were 4, then 5. The duplex filled with noise, cartoons blaring, sneakers thumping down the hall, the baby's cry slicing the night in two. And somehow, quietly, without a meeting or a vote, I became the one who made it all possible. I paid the rent. I bought the groceries. I covered field trip fees and school pictures and the extra $20 someone always needed for something. Kiara handled the kids in the way she handled everything, when it suited her. Travis handled nothing at all. He slept late and talked big. He had plans that never made it past the couch. He called me Nay like we were buddies and asked if I could spot him gas money. When I said no, he laughed like it was a joke. When I said yes, he didn't say thank you. The kids, though, they were real. They were sticky hands and cereal bowls left in the sink. They were whispered Auntie Naomi at bedtime, and small bodies leaning into me when thunder rolled through the valley. I learned their rhythms the way I learned my job, by paying attention. Ethan, the oldest, was 16, and already too observant for his own good. He watched adults the way other boys watch sports. The younger ones followed him like he knew the way out. Normal life, for us, looked like chaos held together by routine. I woke at 5:30, the house still smelling like yesterday's dinner. I packed lunches while the coffee brewed, the radio low so it wouldn't wake the baby. By 6:30, shoes were missing and someone was crying because their hoodie was in the wash. Kiara slept through most of it. Travis didn't even pretend. At work, I was competent, respected. I trained new hires and fixed problems before they became disasters. I had a supervisor who once told me, "You should be doing more than this." I smiled and said thank you, then went home and made spaghetti for 8. At night, after the kids were down, I sat at the small table by the window with my laptop, teaching myself things I didn't yet have words for: databases, process flows, the quiet logic of systems analysis. It felt like learning a new language in secret. It felt like oxygen. Kiara noticed, eventually. "You're always on that thing," she said one night, scrolling her phone without looking up. "What, you too good for TV now?" I shrugged. "Just trying to learn something." She laughed then, sharp and quick. Learn what? You already got a job. It was the first clue, maybe. The way my growth made her uncomfortable. The way she started asking more questions about my pay, my hours, my accounts. The way mail went missing. The way a charge appeared on my card that I didn't recognize. A small one, then another. I told myself it was a mistake. I told myself family didn't steal from family. That's the thing about slow burns. You feel the heat, but you convince yourself it's just the weather. So when Kiara announced her 6th pregnancy like it was a victory lap, I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just set my mug down, careful not to spill, and said the sentence that changed everything. I can't do this anymore, I told her. My voice didn't shake. I'm not paying for another baby. The room went quiet in a way that felt dangerous. Kiara's smile slid off her face, slow as syrup. Travi looked up from his phone, eyes narrowing, like he'd just realized the game might end. What do you mean? You can't? Kiara asked. I mean I won't, I said. I'm done funding your choices. She stared at me then. Really stared, like she was measuring something. Like she was deciding what I was worth. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment she decided to take what she thought I owed her. I went to bed that night with my door locked, the house settling around me, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt afraid. And underneath that fear, something steadier began to rise, an understanding that boundaries, once drawn, are often tested by fire. That was the night the balance shifted. The days after I said no felt like walking through a house where all the furniture had been moved an inch to the left. Nothing was obviously broken, but I kept bumping into things. Doors closed a little harder. Conversations stopped when I entered the room. Kiara's voice, when she spoke to me at all, took on a sweetness that made my skin prickle. She started calling me sis again. She hadn't used that word in years. In the mornings, I still made breakfast. Old habits don't die just because your heart finally wakes up. I cracked eggs, toasted bread, cut apples into slices, thin enough for small mouths. The kids shuffled in half, asleep, rubbing their eyes. Ethan lingered near the doorway, watching his mother more than the food. You okay, Auntie? He asked once, his voice low. I nodded. I'm fine. It wasn't a lie. Exactly. It was an intention. Kiara, meanwhile, became busy in a way she'd never been before. She reorganized drawers that didn't need organizing. She sat at the table with my mail spread out in front of her, claiming she was sorting bills. When I asked her not to, she laughed it off. Relax, she said. We're family. That word again. Family, like a key she could use on any locked door. At work, things shifted in a different direction. My supervisor, Denise, called me into her office one afternoon. She had the kind of face that told the truth even when her mouth tried to soften it. There's a paid internship opening up in Las Vegas, she said, sliding a printout across the desk. Systems analysis, 6 months, full benefits. At the end, there's a strong chance of placement. My hands went cold as I read it. Las Vegas felt like another planet, bright, far, impossible. I thought of the kids' lunches, the rent, the noise. I thought of my laptop at the kitchen table, the hours stolen after midnight. You should apply, Denny said gently. I think you'd be perfect. I did, in secret, at first. I filled out forms at night, the glow of the screen reflected in the dark window. When the acceptance email came 2 weeks later, I sat on my bed and pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from making a sound. It felt like hope. It felt dangerous. I told Kiara the next morning, because part of me still believed in honesty. I told her I'd be leaving in 2 months, that I'd help transition, that I'd make sure the kids were settled. Her reaction was, calm, too calm. That's great, she said, stirring sugar into her coffee. I always knew you'd do something big. Travis snorted. Vegas, huh? Don't forget us, little people. I smiled, thin. Something in Kiara's eyes flickered, but she said nothing. Not then. The charges on my account started appearing the next week. Small at first. Grocery stores I hadn't been to. Gas stations on the other side of town. I called the bank. They flagged it, issued a new card. I changed my passwords. I told myself it was coincidence. Then the letter came. It was from my warehouse's HR department. I opened it standing at the counter. The kids' backpacks lined up like soldiers by the door. The words blurred, then sharpened. Allegations of theft. Pending investigation. My knees went weak. I sat down hard on the chair. Theft. I'd never taken so much as a pen. The room felt suddenly too loud. The baby crying, the TV blaring, Kiara's voice in the background. "What's wrong?" she asked, peering over my shoulder. I folded the letter quickly. Nothing. She smiled, slow and satisfied, like a cat that had already eaten. The next few days unraveled fast. I was put on administrative leave. My accounts were frozen pending investigation. A police officer knocked on the door one evening, his hand resting casually near his belt. "Naomi Carter," he asked. Kiara hovered behind him, eyes wide, playing her part perfectly. The accusation was surreal. Money missing from company funds, access logs tied to my credentials. I tried to explain, my voice steady even as my inside shook. The officer listened, non-committal. "We'll be in touch," he said. That night, I sat on my bed in the dark, my suitcase half packed, the Vegas offer letter folded in my drawer like a promise I might lose. I felt trapped in my own life, framed by someone who knew my routines, my weaknesses. A soft knock came at my door. Ethan stood there, pale, his hands shaking. "Auntie," he whispered, "I need to show you something." He pulled out his phone. The screen cracked at the corner. On it was a video. Kiara at the computer, my computer, typing, logging into accounts, laughing as Travis stood behind her, watching. "I didn't know what to do," Ethan said, his voice breaking. But I knew it wasn't right. I pulled him into a hug, my heart pounding. The weight of his courage pressed into me. "Thank you," I whispered. "You did the right thing. We didn't sleep that night." By morning, I had copies of everything, timestamps, videos, records. I contacted a lawyer. I forwarded the evidence to HR and the police. And then, before Kiara could spin another lie, I packed my car. When she realized what was happening, she screamed. She cried. She threatened. Travis disappeared. As I drove out of Reno, the desert stretching wide and empty ahead of me, my phone buzzed with messages I didn't read. For the first time in years, the road felt like mine. Behind me, the lies were already unraveling. The desert has a way of making you feel small and steady at the same time. As Reno faded in my rearview mirror, the sky opened up, pale and endless, and I let the quiet fill the car. I didn't turn on the radio. I needed to hear my own thoughts, to make sure they were real. I pulled over once, just past Fallon, to breathe. My hands were still trembling. I rested them on the steering wheel and stared at the horizon until the shaking slowed, leaving a felt like betrayal, even now. Not of Kiara, of the children. That was the ache that followed me, heavy and familiar. By the time I reached Las Vegas, the sun had dipped low, the city rising out of the desert like a mirage of light and glass. I checked into a modest extended-stay hotel near the office park where the internship was based. The room smelled faintly of cleaner and old carpet, but it was quiet. Blessedly quiet. The next morning, my phone exploded. Missed calls, voicemails, texts from numbers I recognized and numbers I didn't. Kiara's voice messages shifted tones, angry, pleading, furious again. One message cut through the noise. "You think you can just run? CPS is here. You can't." They're asking questions. "You did this." I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone heavy in my hand. CPS, Child Protective Services. The words settled into me like a stone. I hadn't called them. I hadn't planned this. But the truth, once set loose, doesn't stay in its lane. Later that day, I met my lawyer via video call, the hum of the hotel act filling the silence between sentences. She was calm, methodical, the kind of woman who took notes while you talked and didn't interrupt until it mattered. "The evidence your nephew provided is strong," she said. "Very strong. Your sister's narrative won't hold." "What about the kids?" I asked. It came out softer than I meant it to. There was a pause. "CPS will assess. That part is out of your hands. out of my hands. I'd spent years holding everything. Letting go felt like free fall. The internship began the following Monday. The office was cool and bright, the walls lined with whiteboards scribbled with diagrams and flowcharts. People spoke in precise language. They asked me what I thought and waited for the answer. No one needed me to rescue them. At night, though, the guilt crept in. I imagined the kids confused, asking where I was. I imagined Ethan standing too straight, trying to be brave. 2 weeks in, Denise called. "They cleared you," she said simply. The police, everyone. You're officially exonerated." I closed my eyes, relief washing through me so fast it made me dizzy. "And Naomi," she added, "they want to fast-track you. You're doing exceptional work." The call ended, and I sat there smiling into the quiet room, tears sliding down my face. Vindication felt less like triumph and more like air returning to a collapsed lung. Back in Reno, the consequences were finally catching up to Kiara. CPS had found what I'd always known but never named: empty cabinets, missed appointments, children raising children. Travis was gone the moment things got serious. Kiara's messages turned venomous. "They took my babies," she wrote. "I hope you're happy." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because engaging now would only reopen wounds that needed time to close. Ethan called me instead, from a foster home that smelled like laundry detergent and unfamiliar rules. "They said we'll be okay," he told me, trying to sound older than 16. "They said we might be able to stay together." My chest tightened. "You were so brave," I told him. "I'm proud of you." "I learned it from you," he said, and I had to bite my lip to keep from crying. Months passed. I found a small apartment closer to work, furnished it with secondhand pieces that felt like choices instead of obligations. The internship turned into a job offer, systems analyst, full time. The title felt strange on my tongue, but right. I worked hard. I saved. I built something no one could take from me. When the court date came, I didn't attend. My lawyer handled it. Kiara faced charges for identity theft and fraud. CPS made their determinations. The kids were placed with relatives and foster families who could meet their needs. The hardest part was accepting that justice doesn't always look like reunion. Sometimes it looks like distance. I opened a trust fund quietly, with help from a financial advisor recommended by work. A protected account, earmarked for the kids' education and basic needs. I named Ethan as a point of contact when he turned 18. It wasn't a rescue, it was a boundary. On the anniversary of my move, I drove out past the city limits, where the desert stretched wide and forgiving. I turned off the engine and listened to the wind. I thought about the girl who stood in that Reno kitchen, coffee going cold, finally saying no. She hadn't known what it would cost, or what it would give back. Sometimes love means stepping away so everyone has a chance to heal, even if it hurts. The first time I saw Kiara again was in a courthouse hallway that smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper. I hadn't planned on it. I was there for a routine signature, final paperwork tied to the identity theft case, the kind of administrative ending that closes doors quietly. I wore a simple navy dress and low heels, clothes that belonged to the woman I was becoming. Kiara looked smaller. Her hair was pulled back too tight, the color faded. The confidence she once carried like perfume had thinned into something brittle. When she spotted me, her eyes flashed, not with relief, but with accusation. "So you came?" she said. I didn't answer right away. I studied her face, searching for the sister I remembered. The girl who used to braid my hair on the porch when we were kids, who once swore she'd always protect me. "I came to finish what you started," I said finally. She scoffed. "You always think you're better than me." "No," I said quietly. "I think I'm responsible for myself." That landed harder than any insult. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For a moment we stood there in silence, the echo of footsteps and murmured voices filling the space between us. "They wouldn't have taken the kids if you hadn't left," she said, her voice cracking just enough to sound real. I felt the old pull then, the instinct to explain, to soften, to take the blame so she wouldn't have to carry it alone. I resisted it. "They took the kids because they weren't safe," I said. "And you know that." Her eyes dropped, not in shame, but in calculation. The moment passed. The guard called her name, and she walked away without looking back. That was the last time I spoke to her. Life in Las Vegas settled into... Mornings began with light through sheer curtains instead of noise. I drank my coffee hot now, standing at the window, watching the city wake up. At work, I led small projects, then bigger ones. I learned how to present my ideas without apologizing for them. One afternoon, my manager asked me to mentor a new hire. The request startled me. "You have a way of seeing the whole system," he said, "and the people inside it." I thought of Ethan, of the kids, of myself at 26, invisible and overextended. "I'd like that," I said. Healing wasn't dramatic. It came in pieces, therapy sessions where I learned the difference between responsibility and obligation, quiet evenings where loneliness didn't feel like punishment. I volunteered with a local program that taught basic tech skills to teens aging out of foster care. I never told them my story, I just showed up. The trust fund statements arrived. I reviewed them, adjusted contributions, then filed them away. It wasn't penance. It was preparation. Ethan called on his 18th birthday. "I got accepted to community college," he said, breathless. "They have a cybersecurity program." I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. "That's incredible." "No," I replied. "You did. We talked about classes, about his plans. He didn't ask about his mother. I didn't offer." Years later, standing in my own kitchen, this one bright and quiet, with cabinets that closed properly, I thought about the word self-preservation. For a long time I'd believed it was selfish, something sharp and ugly. Now I understood it as a form of respect. For myself, for the children who needed stability, not sacrifice. For the truth that love without boundaries is not love, it's erosion. I didn't save my sister. I saved my... And in doing so, I made room for others to find their footing. If you're listening to this and carrying more than your share, ask yourself, who taught you that your worth was measured by how much you could endure? These days, when I think back to that kitchen in Reno, the peeling floor, the humming refrigerator, my coffee going cold, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel clarity. I see a young woman standing at the edge of her own life, finally realizing that love was never meant to cost her future. There are still nights when guilt knocks softly. It always does. But I've learned that guilt isn't always a sign you've done something wrong. Sometimes it's just the echo of an old role you were never meant to keep playing forever. I didn't stop loving my family when I left. I stopped letting love be used as a leash. Ethan is grown now. The younger kids are finding their way. Their paths look different than I once imagined, but they are safer, steadier, and I've learned that safety is not abandonment, it's foundation. As for me, I still work with systems, still believe in structure. But the most important system I ever rebuilt was my own sense of self, one where boundaries aren't walls, but doors. I get to open and close. If this story found you while you're exhausted, and while you're holding everyone together and wondering who's holding you, let me tell you something I wish someone had told me sooner. You are allowed to choose yourself without apology. You are allowed to say no even when your voice shakes. And you are allowed to walk away from a burning house, even if other people insist you stay inside with them. So I'll leave you with this question, the one I still return to on quiet mornings. If protecting yourself meant disappointing someone you love, would you still do it? If this story spoke to you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to hear more real stories about boundaries, betrayal, and quiet courage, make sure you're subscribed. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is finally let go.